My dear friends, if our Torah is obsessed with anything, as this week's Torah portion shows, it is concern for our treatment of others and looking out for the most vulnerable members of society, the widow, the orphan, the homeless, the dispossessed, the stranger, the newcomer. The Torah commands us to be there for people not only when times are good or when we have understandable self-interests. The Torah commands us to be there for people especially when they are powerless, most vulnerable, and in need. Twice in this week's Torah portion, Mishpatim, for instance, we find commandments dealing with care for the complete stranger. This emphasis upon the treatment of those who are unknown to those already in the circle of a community or society. It's not unusual within the Torah. Our ancestors always emphasized the pain of the outsider because of our own experience and sought solution through commandments, mitzvot, for sensitivity to and justice for the stranger in 36 different places within the Torah, more than the mention of any other mitzvah. Also in this week's Torah portion, it's 4 chapters, Exodus 21, 22, 23, 24, and since most of you are not in Torah study, Bagels and Bible, at 8:45, although you're all invited, Rabbi Feivel Strauss would love it, there are bagels, it's on the house. So let me give you kind of a triptych of 3 salient features in this journey through Mishpatim. The first dimension is the hitting over the head of no matter what you are thinking, don't forget the outcast 36 times. But also in this week's Torah portion is the only verse or verses related to the subject of abortion, the termination of a pregnancy. I want to give you the verse in Exodus 21, because a lot of times people quote the Bible, but they don't quote this. When men fight, if one of them pushes a pregnant woman and a miscarriage results, terminating the pregnancy, but no other damage ensues, namely the death of the mother, the guy who hit the other guy and caused the termination of the pregnancy shall be fined according as the woman's husband may exact from him. Pardon the relative or ancient sexism, but still, the payment is to be based on reckoning. But if other damage ensues from the first guy fighting with the second guy and knocking the baby, but other damage ensues, namely the death of the mother, if he kills the mother as a result of the fight, the penalty is not a fine. The penalty shall be life for life. In other words, if a fetus is destroyed, God forbid, it's not taken lightly. The penalty is not death. But if a mother dies, the penalty is life for life. And that is why, according to Jewish law, based on this verse, a fetus is never equated in Judaism with the mother outside of the womb. This doesn't make Judaism pro-choice. This doesn't make Judaism pro-life. This just says that the life of a mother always takes precedence over the child growing within inside her. Toward the end of this portion, as I said, with 4 chapters of laws, we read, and something you all are familiar with, but it's the 3rd passage in the 5 books of Moses where the Sabbath is mentioned. The other 2 are the 2 versions of the 10 Commandments, speaking of remembering and observing the Sabbath in Exodus and Deuteronomy. This week, however, the Torah says literally, On the seventh day, you shall go on strike from doing your work. That's what Shabbat or Sabbath comes from. The same Hebrew root word for going on strike. If workers go on strike, it's a shvita. It's based on Shabbat. Hence the commandment to rest on Shabbat. So in the spirit of this week's specific mention of Shabbat, I just want to give you 3 quick thoughts about Shabbat. Number 1, Shabbat as an island in time. Number 2, Shabbat as a spiritual makeover. Number 3, Shabbat as a time for renewal. Shabbat as an island in time. That's the revolutionary thought about the Jewish Sabbath. That time itself can be holy, not a person, not a mountain, not an altar, but time itself can be holy. For the next 24 hours, we are to be at one with the world, not against it. And the way we do that is by going on strike from whatever we normally do, to put aside our watches and think about the bigger picture. Are we spending the time God has given us wisely? Can we let go of the working week or the 24-hour news repeat for even just a few hours? Number 2, Shabbat is a spiritual makeover. Shabbat helps us refocus ourselves on moments of life rather than moments of things. This service seeks to set the mood for the next 24 hours, a mood of relaxation, contemplation, a spirit of joy and delight, a message of rest, appreciation of God's world. Shabbat is a spiritual makeover because it gives us perspective on how to live. The art of living consists of being able to hold 2 opposite ideas in tension at the same time. First, to make long-term plans as if we're going to live forever. Too many people have done that this week with their pensions, given what's happened. And we all do that, right? Second, to conduct ourselves daily as if tomorrow were our last day. Those 2 tensions, long-term plans, tomorrow's our last. Life's greatest achievement is the remaking of ourselves so that we can finally learn how to live in that balance. And Shabbat is our weekly opportunity to reaffirm, regain perspective on the art of living. Finally, Shabbat is a time for renewal and starting over. We all could stand to recharge our batteries. Everyone in this Danziger Chapel or watching can stand to recharge our physical, spiritual, and emotional batteries after a long week of work or school. We all can benefit from a fresh start. And that's what the Jewish Sabbath provides every Friday night through tomorrow night. You know, there's a story told about an angry reader who stormed into the newspaper office, waving the day's paper, asking to see the editor of the obituary column. He showed him his name in the obituary listing. You see, he said, I'm very much alive. I demand a retraction. The reporter replied, I never retract a story, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put you in the birth column and give you a fresh start tomorrow. A fresh start, new perspective, taking time out, maybe even learning some of the wisdom that's in this week's Torah portion alone. These are some of the key elements in Judaism's greatest contribution to civilization beyond the idea of one God, the Sabbath. May each of us welcome this weekly opportunity, not because the Sabbath needs us, but because we need the Sabbath at least one day a week, more than ever before. And let us say, Amen.